Hey, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the ACU STAR Center's PCA and HCCN Professional Development Series. We're excited that you're joining us today for the second of our six-part series for you, PCA and HCCN staff. So we hope you're excited, just like we're excited to be joining us today. You guys are always some of my favorite groups to present to, and just really glad that you guys are here. I am Suzanne Speer. I'm the Director of Workforce Development here at ACU, and again, just so excited that you guys are here joining us today. So if you're new, if this is your first time here with all of the ACU STAR Center stuff, wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of who ACU is. So ACU, or the Association of Clinicians for the Underserved, is a national nonprofit organization. We are a membership organization that was formed about 20 years ago as a National Health Service Corps Alumni Association. And through the years, we've changed a little bit, but our focus remains the same. And that is the recruitment and retention of a transdisciplinary workforce to serve the access issue. And we do a lot of different things. Obviously, our National Health Service Corps remains as our chief advocacy focus. We do a lot around the National Health Service Corps. We also develop training and resources for clinicians and others on various topics relating to clinical workforce. So we've got some suicide prevention projects going on. We have a vision services program. Anyway, lots of different things going on at ACU. And we also have a conference every year in either late July or early August, and really provides a great networking opportunity, and also a great educational chance for you to really edify on all things clinicians and underserved populations. So, as I mentioned, ACU does a lot of things, and the reason why we're here today, and the way that we're here today, rather, is because ACU has a national cooperative agreement through the Bureau of Primary Health Care to develop tools and resources around the recruitment and retention of a clinical workforce. And so we call our National Cooperative Agreement, or our NCA, the STAR Center, which stands for Solutions, Training, and Resources for Recruitment and Retention. So again, I'm sure most of you have been to our website, but if you haven't, go check it out. It's separate from the ACU website, and the STAR Center website is chcworkforce.org. Go take a look, check it out. A lot of our tools and resources are there. Actually, all of our tools and resources are there. So if you have a question relating to the things that we're going to talk today about our resources, they're housed on our website, and there are lots of other things that we have there too. So I hope you'll go and check it out. So now it's my turn to introduce the ACU faculty. So we have a great team, a really dynamic team. So obviously I'm Suzanne. Mariah Blake, who is our program manager, is also on the call today. She is our go-to about all things really just technical side. So if you have any questions or any trouble logging on or anything like that, I know she put it in the chat, but feel free to email her at mblake@clinicians.org. Also rounding out our team is Sabrina Edgington. She is our Director of Learning and Curriculum Design. She's not able to be on the call with us today, but she is a part of our team, and we're really excited. She's the newest member of the STAR Center team, so we're really excited to have her there on board with us. So as we move forward, so the goals of this PCA and HCCN Professional Development Series is really to build your workforce expertise. There is so many, you guys do so many different things at your PCAs and HCCNs, and we want to help you, we want to edify you on all things workforce. So we want you to be able to go out and to learn things about workforce and recruitment and retention, so then in turn you can go and talk to your health centers and your members about these things and to help them on their way at their health centers. We're also going to share some PCA and HCCN successes along the way, and also connect you with others through the chat and different things like that that you can hear from other colleagues and see what they're doing through that chat and through any questions that they might have during the series. Okay, webinar housekeeping. Per usual, we are recording. We want you to ask questions, number 2. Please do. Again, the chat box is a really good place to do it. If you want to have something that's sort of in the background periphery just for the presenters, you can put that in the questions box. But the chat box is a really great way to do that. In the next slide, I'm going to show you how to do that so you can make sure you're talking to everyone. But yeah, definitely ask some questions. At the end, please fill out our session evaluation. Those are really important to us. We always take that to heart, and we want you to, let us know what you think and how we can improve, because we are always learning. It's a continuous learning here at ACU, and we always want to do things better, and even maybe just a topic that you want to hear about. And we're going to have fun today, like we always do. So as I mentioned, if you put your question in the chat box and you want it to go to everyone, so you want Mariah and myself to see it during the session, go ahead and put it in the chat box. You can go over, you can click on the chat box as here in the slide, and then also you want to make sure that in the little to bar that you do the drop down and you either put it to all panelists or you can also put it to everyone there. So again, you can either one of those things is great. So anyway, onward. Today, objectives. So first of all, we want you guys to understand the importance of incorporating great recruitment practice, incorporate practices for recruitment rather in your retention efforts, right? So we're talking today about aligning those 2 efforts and really making sure that they're syncing up and you're putting equal weight on both of those efforts there. We're going to be identifying some best practices for recruitment that can also lead to retention, and we are also going to be hearing from a PCA expert on this topic. So excited to get started, and with that, we're going to jump off. Okay, jump off rather, not off the call, but off into the content. Okay, so our first poll question here. So when you think about retention, what does recruitment come to mind? So yes, absolutely, it does. Kind of, sort of, maybe, as B. C is not really, or D, no at all. No, not at all. I don't think about retention when I hear the word recruitment or things like that. So go ahead and weigh in. There is no wrong answer here. This is a safe space, and so let us know what you guys think about that. So what do you think about when you think about retention? Does recruitment come to mind? So, when you think about one, do you think about the other? So we're going to leave that open for about another 10 seconds or so, and then we will look and see your answers. All right. Mariah, you want to close that out for me? Awesome. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So 81% of you that voted said yes, absolutely. When I think about retention, I also think about recruitment. 81% of you said yes, 8% of you said kind of, sort of, and 12% of you said not really. So thank you so much for weighing in. That's great. We're going to talk, for those of you who either kind of, sort of think about recruitment when you think about retention, or, when you hear the word retention, and maybe those who don't, we're going to talk about maybe why you should be thinking about that a little bit more. Okay. So I have another question for you guys. It's not a poll question, but it is a question. So when you think about, this is something that we would love for you to answer in the chat box. And I'm trying to get my chat box so I can see what's going on my screen. Sorry, you guys. So when it comes to retention, training, and technical assistance, what words come to mind? So when you think about that, again, what word comes to mind? It could be one word, it could be 3 words, it could be 4 words. What do you think about when it comes to mind? Do you think about difficult? Do you think about easy? Do you think compensation? Do you think stay interviews? What do you think about when you do that? Okay, I'm having trouble. Barriers, that's really good. Workforce lifestyle, well, excuse me, life cycle. Okay, great, wonderful. I love these things. Workforce life cycle. Okay. And you guys keep putting these in here. These are wonderful. I love hearing this because there is so much that goes into retention. Obviously, we're talking about we're talking about throughout this series. Today, we're specifically focusing on recruitment, but I love hearing all these things. Fit, generation, benefits package, generational differences. Great. I love that. Such a big deal. Obviously, we're not going to dive into that today, but 5 generations in the workforce, y'all. 5. That's crazy. So much to think about when it comes to those things, and really makes a difference when it comes to retention and dealing with those intergenerational things. Somebody else said developing retention plans. Yes, we want you to do that. And also reducing burnout, career ladders, engagement. All right, you guys keep it coming. I love it. Keep putting your thoughts in the chat box while we move along and we go and we talk about aligning our recruitment and our retention TTA efforts. Okay, y'all. So yes, as you guys might have guessed based on just the title of today's session, as well as what we have already kind of alluded to, yes, there is a link between recruitment and retention. They're, kind of one of those things where you kind of have to weigh it, but they're both there. It doesn't really ever go away. It's not something that you can take one out of the other. It's one of the reasons why, if you go on our website, and one of the resources that we're going to talk about throughout this series is our recruitment and retention template, right? So they are really linked. They are, you can't really think about one without thinking about the other. It is so important to realize that they don't live in isolation, right? So one affects the other. So if you do something with recruitment, it affects retention. If you do something, believe it or not, if you do stuff on the retention side to really beef up your retention efforts, yes, it does in fact affect your recruitment efforts. So I'm sorry, I'm just realizing I'm talking a lot with my hands today, but anyway, it really is something that when you are talking to your health centers about retention, really it's going to affect recruitment and vice versa. So think about when you're developing all of your TTA efforts, think about how, you might just be talking to them about retention, but what on the recruitment side is really going to affect the retention. And that's obviously what we're going to talk about today. So y'all, there are so many things that we could talk about when it comes to recruitment processes that affect retention. But today we're going to focus on a few specific things. So yes, retention starts during the recruitment process. So we're going to dive into a couple different things here. So we are going to talk specifically about job listings, interaction during the interview process, on-site interviews, as well as follow-up. So we're going to touch on those 4 major things. Again, there are so many things that go into, and actually our PCA guest speaker is going to actually talk a little bit about this more. But I'm just going to touch on these few things and then hand it over to really talk about some other things there that you might want to be thinking about more specifically. So, first of all, job listing here. So with your job listing, make sure that you are not just posting a job description. You want to make sure it's clear, that it's concise, that it really gets to the heart of what is going on. And when I say concise, I don't mean that you should make it short. That's not at all what we're saying here. But you want to make sure that the pertinent information is listed there. So if there are things like, and if you're moving on to containing pertinent information, are you open to flexible scheduling? Do you have amazing benefits that you want to share with people? All of these things are super important when you are putting your job description there, your job listing together. Make sure that folks, it excites them. It's something that they want to apply to. It's not like this ho-hum, thing. Try to, if you live in a really beautiful place, or if health centers live in a really beautiful place, make sure that they are putting these things in that describe their area and why people want to live there. If you have a great school system, you want to say, we are in the top whatever of, in the state or whatever those attributes are. that you have or that a health center has, make sure they're putting those in there, as well as, mission. That's always something that's really important to include in there as well. Last thing I want to mention when it comes to your job listing, make sure that it's easy for folks to apply. Don't laugh at me when I tell you, but not in the not so distant past, last year, I was on a few websites where health centers were asking folks to apply via fax. That's great, wonderful, but it's not 2020, right? So we want to make sure that our health centers are edified in the ease of use when it comes to your application process. So if you are working with a health center that particularly comes to you and says, we just can't find any applicants. People are just not applying to our jobs. Go to their website, see how their job listing reads. Is it reading in a really clear, concise manner that has all these great information? And are they making it easy for them to apply? Do they have like an apply now or apply here, place? Or are they asking them to, do you have to click in 5 different places to get your application in? So just think about that when you're talking to people about their application process, and making sure that it's as easy as possible to apply there. So can't stress that enough. That's really our first impression. And again, if you want them to come in and interview with them and then, and then hire them and then for them to stay, think about that first impression. It's really important. Okay. Oops, sorry guys. Okay, my next slide. Okay. So second thing is your interaction with your candidates during your during the recruitment and also review process. But I wanted to, before I do that, I just saw a question come in, and I think it's good for me to address it now versus waiting till the end. So from an equity perspective, where does ACU stand on posting salary? So that is a great question, and that goes back more to the job listing part. It could go either way. We don't really have an official stance on it. There are a couple thoughts on it. It could either attract or detract folks. If you feel that you have a very, if that's something you're struggling with and you're really trying to work with your management and you're trying to get it up, and it's not maybe where you think it should be or whatever, maybe that's something you want to leave it out. Or if you really want to put it in, I would encourage you to give a range. I wouldn't say, pay for this, is, X, Y, Z. I would definitely get a range. I think that if you're going to put it out there, I think it's important to give that range so you're not, just so you have some wiggle room there, so you're not stuck into one thing and things like that. So I hope that helps. I know that really wasn't a very clear answer, but a very, rather it wasn't, very clear cut, but anyway, if that's something, again, could go either way. If you want to include it, great. If not, that's okay too. I think it could really go either way. Okay, moving back to, and thank you for asking that, by the way, Anna, that was great. Interaction during the recruitment process, another really important thing. So you want to be, again, clear with what you're doing. So if someone emails you and you start that interaction process via email, it's usually via email these days, you want to make sure that you're very clear about the steps in the process. So if the HR is talking to them first, then they should say, okay, in X amount of days, you're going to hear from the medical director or whomever the process involves, right? So you want to make sure that they know what's going on. The process is very clear to them, and that they know what's going to happen next. And you want to make sure that it's consistent. So this is also important too. So you want to make sure that all of your recruitment procedures are written down so that every member of your recruitment team, and again, it's not necessarily just HR, it could be C-suite, it could be anybody that interacts with your candidates. You just want to make sure that it's consistent, right? And so with those clear next steps for every candidate, you want to make sure that you're consistent as well. Lastly, make it timely. I know this is really hard for health centers, but when you're talking to them, stress them enough, or stress that a lot, and just, whether or not this is something that, I know we have some PCAs that do direct recruitment, and so they're the ones that are sourcing the candidates. But even if you're not, I think this is a really important thing to stress with them, because the good ones are going to slip away. So if you start a dialogue and then 2 months later you get back to them, then that's just really tough. So so try to make it as timely as possible, and they'll definitely appreciate that in the end, and the candidates will appreciate, even if it ends up not being from somebody that you end up hiring or that chooses to come work for them. It's just a good best practice. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about, and lastly, during this little section here, we're going to talk about on-site interviews. So this is one of the biggest things, especially if a health center is recruiting a physician or another type of clinical provider, right? So for other type of positions, for front desk staff or medical assistants, probably not going to be relocating, right? So it's not going to be necessary to bring them, have them travel. Yes, they're still going to come in for an on-site, they're going to probably come into your site to do it, but they won't be coming in from out of town. So specifically, when I'm talking about on-site interviews for this slide, talking about really bringing them in from out of town for an on-site interview. So we want to make sure that health centers are getting all relevant parties involved. So when you write a recruitment plan, make sure that everybody, just like for the phone process, make sure that all the parties are listed and that they all know about it. So make sure that all the relevant parties are involved. And depending on the size of your organization, on the position, all that kind of good stuff, all the relevant parties might involve board members, community members, things like that. Again, you want to make sure that you're really rolling out the red carpet, or they're really rolling out the red carpet, to make sure that they're giving that really great first impression about what is going on to your organization. And you really, frankly, as you guys know, this is an opportunity for health centers to sell themselves. Health centers are in some of the most amazing communities in the United States, whether it's rural or urban. We know that we have something to sell, and we want to make sure that our health centers are doing that. So help them do that through this process. So again, you want to make sure all relevant parties are involved. You want to make sure that whether or not it is somebody you're bringing in from out of town, or just somebody that is local and they're coming in for an interview, you want to make sure that they allow time to meet the staff. This might just be a walking through and saying hello and all that kind of good stuff, or it could be if it's more of a high-level person that you're bringing in, maybe like a CMO that you're trying to hire, make sure that they have time to talk to other C-suite members and other management staff that they might be managing or working with. You want to make sure you allow that time to do that, so they have a good idea of what your health center is like, or their health center is like. You really want to do that so that they get a great impression of what's going on. And again, this is where recruitment and retention are linked, because when you have your candidates talking to your staff and they're happy because you're doing a great job retaining them, they're going to see that. So when they interact with your staff, they're going to see what an amazing place it is to work, and so they're going to want to come work there. So keep that in mind too. Interact with their community. As I mentioned, a lot of times, especially when you're bringing in a clinical provider or somebody that's more high level from out of town, help them interact with the community, hook them up with a realtor, all of those type of things that, get a feel for the schools if they have children, if they like to do things, whatever their interests are, try to connect them with the community during that on-site interview, because it will really go far into helping really sell their organization and ultimately make them want to come and work for them. So interact with the community, as well as, last thing I want to mention on this, allow ample time with the candidate, help them to allow ample time. There is one health center that I worked with or was working with, and they have their candidates on site for 3 to 4 days. That is a really long time, but this health center wants to make sure that they're going to be a great fit for the community, that they're going to be happy. It's going to be a mutual fit, right? So, you know, whether it's a day and a half or 2 days, or even just a day, whatever it is, whatever the length of time is that you feel is or the health centers feel is necessary, just make sure you allow that time, so neither party feels rushed about making a decision. I know that's really hard to do with health centers, because the first thing they're gonna tell you is, well, I'm just so busy, I just can't do that. And you know, what we would say back is, well, this is a major investment in your health center, and you want to make sure that you're hiring for the right fit. And just think about that when you think about how much time that they're scheduling for their on-site interviews. So again, from the first impression of the job listing to when you bring them on site, really think about that and think about how you're interacting with them at all touch points. And you really want to make it a positive experience for everybody involved. The next thing I want to move on to is, so you have interviewed someone, you've talked to them via email or phone, you brought them in for an on-site interview, and you've decided to hire them. And so the next thing I want to talk to you about before I hand it over to our PCA guest expert is, I really want to talk to you guys about how important the onboarding process is to really, how that can affect retention. And, the first 90 days are super important. So you just want to make sure that health centers know how important that is. Some health centers have formalized onboarding programs, some don't, but to whatever level it is, can't stress enough how important that is. So you just want to make sure that as soon as they come on board, when they sign on the dotted line, that the health centers are making a really positive experience with their new employees. So a couple different things that you can do there, and by doing these things, you're going to be helping your new employees really get acquainted with the organization and also into their new role. So not in their role, but your organization as well. Really, this is going to enforce this whole process as reinforcing their decision to go ahead and join or rather the health center. Right. Okay, so connections and mentorships. You want to think about this. This is really important. So you are thinking about how you're supporting this person. So as humans, we are, we're part of a pack, right? And whether you're introverted or extroverted or whatever it is, you want to feel like you're fitting in, right? So you want to make sure that you're providing opportunities to have formal and informal connections. So whether it's through a mentorship program where you actually pair folks up together and you have that kind of connection, or you're helping them get that connection, or whether or not it's just, hey, let's go to lunch and give them an opportunity to meet people informally. However you're doing it, those mentorships and connections are super, super important when you are onboarding someone. Assimilation. You see that piece of the pie is kind of coming into it. That's really deliberate. So this whole process really is assimilation, but during that assimilation process, you're not only really bringing this person into the your organization, but it's really you're helping them to understand the culture of your organization, the mission of your organization, really how things are. What's going on within your organization, and really how does it flow. So and again, lastly, the thing I want to mention is training. This is something that can be both informal and formal, and really it helps folks progress and develop in their role as well as a part of your organization. So just think about that when it comes to all of the different ways, again, whether it's formal or informal, how can one of your health centers really beef up their onboarding process to really make those first 60, 90 days, 6 months, how can they make them the most positive they can so things can really come together, so they can make those personal connections, so they can be trained in their roles, so they can really do a great job at your organization. So So just think about that when it comes to the onboarding process in general, and how again this is something that takes time, and folks you know, they're like, well, I can't do that. Well, when you know, if you're talking to someone and they say, well, that's just a huge chunk, I can't really do all of that at once. Start small. What can you do to start small with both your with the recruitment process and then also your onboarding process? All right, moving on to our next question. So after hearing about all of the stuff when it comes to recruitment, what do you want to explore more after the session? So you can use the chat box to respond, and you know, what maybe have you not trained on historically and you want to train on in the future? So think about that, put it in the chat, and we would love to hear from you guys. What specifically about the recruitment process do you want to explore more after the session? Whether it's something that you guys want to explore, whether it's something that you want to hear from us, you know, let us know what comes to mind after hearing all that, and feel free to keep it going as well. Okay, so someone just put in best practices for software and onboarding. Great, yes. Software is another big one, right? I mean, that training is very important when it comes to your EMR and all the systems that talk to each other, no matter what the role is. Okay, great. Develop an in-house training program to help with recruitment. Yes, that's another big one. That's another big one. All right. Well, thanks to you who've already responded. I'll continue to monitor that and share that at the end if we've got some time, and we can go from there. Okay. So moving on to the hear from a PCA expert portion of our programming today. So I'm super excited to announce and introduce our guest expert today. So we have Judd Mellinger-Blouch from the Pennsylvania Association of Community Health Centers. And he is the director of the Pennsylvania Primary Career Center. And so that career center helps community health centers in Pennsylvania, as well as rural health clinics and other healthcare organizations, recruit and retain physicians, dentists, nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, thank you, I can speak, and other primary care providers. He is also involved in the branding and communications at PAC as well. And frankly, generally, he's an all-around great guy, and he's really great to interact with. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Judd, and we'll welcome him to our session here. And I'm going to make sure that he has remote control. Okay, yes, he does. Yep, you're good. Yep, good, Judd.
Okay, I am now. Okay. And that just went off. Why did that go on to the, take us back to that, to the slideshow? Hi, everyone. This is Judd Mellinger-Blouch. I know many of you through, a lot of you through, I'm not on the slideshow anymore.
Okay, sorry about the technical, Judd, I'm going to get you there.
That's all right. All right, she took it back. Great. So anyway, so I know a lot of you through PCA face-to-face meetings and also through 3RNet, and recognize a lot of names out there and people who are as much, and probably not probably, but more of an expert on this than I am. So so if any of you out there who know me and are more of an expert, take it easy on me in your evaluations. I'm trying my best. Anyway, so I wanted to give you a little bit of background on what I'm going to talk about today, what I'm going to share with you. And we have every year in Pennsylvania for the Association of Community Health Centers, we have our annual meeting. And at that annual meeting, we have a recruitment and retention intensive, a 4-hour intensive session on the first day. It's actually part of our state funding. Our career center is funded by the state of Pennsylvania, and part of that is a requirement that to use some of that funding for an intensive session at our annual conference. And this past year, we focused it on onboarding and retention. We had a really good speaker. Some of you might know Rosa Augusta from Urban Health Plan in the Bronx. came down and talked to us all about their onboarding program. But we started off with a program that I brazenly stole from 3RNet, but actually with their permission, with Mark Barkley's permission. Mark Barkley is the director of member services there, and he came up with this idea. And what we did was we presented this recruit to retain hierarchy, and I'll show it to you in just a second. And we did it, it's 5 parts, and so I did an intro, and then I had one of my community health center experts come up, one of the people who is good at recruitment, usually from one of the bigger health centers, because they oftentimes have a more advanced recruiting apparatus all set up and can really shed some light for the smaller health centers. And they came up and did an illustration of the 5 levels of this recruit to retain hierarchy. So let's see, I think I have, okay, there we go. Okay, so there is the recruiting for retention hierarchy, again, stolen from 3RNet. And it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, well, based loosely on that. I think that was Mark's inspiration for this, if you will. But it actually does kind of follow that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm sure a lot of you recall that from Psych 1 in college, or from just reading about it since then. But the 5 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, starting from the bottom and the most essential, are physiological needs, that's, food, clothing, shelter, to safety needs, having a secure environment, freedom, that sort of thing. And being secure, being safe, being, removed from danger. Then the third one is love and belonging. 4th is esteem, and then the top one is self-actualization. And so we all need the first 3 levels at least. And then you get higher esteem and self-actualization are great to have, but you can survive without them. Although you won't be very happy, but you could survive. So anyway, but on the recruit for retention hierarchy, we start with, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail, and also just to back up real quickly and say that if you want my full presentation from our annual meeting that we had back in October, I'd be glad to send it to you. Just drop me an email or send an email to Mariah or Suzanne, and they can forward it to me, and I'll be glad to email that to you, and you can steal as brazenly as I stole from 3RNet. We're all in this together. So anyway, so the recruit for retention hierarchy is, the bottom part is a recruiting process, and like I said, I'll get more into detail as we go along. And then considering what candidate motivations exist and what's motivating the candidates perhaps to work in the field where you're recruiting them, or more specifically to work for you in work for your members in their health centers. And then strategic marketing. So what are your selling points? How are you sourcing the job? How are you sourcing candidates? How are you interacting on social media? And then regeneration, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but has already been mentioned several times in the comments on career ladders and succession planning. And then finally, an area that I feel is, I think that the top 2 areas, regeneration and culture, are oftentimes really overlooked when we talk not only about our health centers, but within the walls of our own PCAs and HCCNs, and that we sometimes, I think a lot of businesses forget how important that is. So I'll move right along here. So just talking briefly about the recruiting process, this is something, these are one of the 2 elements of the hierarchy I think get 95% of the attention when people are thinking about recruiting. And I'll get to the other one I'll get to in a couple slides. But recruiting process, in some cases does not get enough attention, but I think in a lot of cases probably gets more than its fair share. But what is the recruiting process at a community health center? Is there actually a plan? And as we've talked about before here, and also in on the PCA calls with integrated work, we are all required this year to help our members come up with recruitment and retention, workforce development and recruitment plans. And so that's going to be a key element for all of us this year. But is there a plan developed at the health center? Are roles and responsibilities documented? Are there people who are actually responsible for this? And does it involve all staff, or more than just the HR director? I don't know about your small health centers, but I know at a lot of ours, the CEO or the HR director are doing the recruitment pretty much by themselves. They're pretty much a one-person team. And if that's the case, that's going to be that you're asking to burn somebody out, or they're not going to give the attention to recruitment and retention that needs to happen. And are you involved in the community and the board of directors? I think oftentimes the board of directors also is not nearly as involved as they should be in setting the course for what kind of employees are needed, what kind of providers are needed, and how folks are being treated once they're there. Some key resources you can use: the Association for the Advancement of Physician and Provider Recruitment. I think I have that right. I'm a member, but I can barely remember what the acronym stands for now. That's always, of course, a great resource. The 3RNet Recruiting for Retention Manual, and also they have an academy every year. And I mentioned this several times, but if you are not familiar, if you are not involved in 3RNet, there's a member in every state, and if you can go on the 3RNet website, 3rnet.org, and find out who that member is, and they can usually give you some access to 3RNet materials. And finally, the STAR² Center, of course, you're right on the phone with them. So anyway, so those are some resources. And like I said, this recruiting process gets a lot of attention, as it should get, a volume of attention, but I think sometimes we forget some other things. And one of those things that we oftentimes forget are what are the candidate motivations. And I think it's key to have your process down and to think through candidate motivations before you ever even advertise a job, or before you even step out and start looking for people. And the motivation for candidates oftentimes, they range. We all know that they range for our members who are out there serving the needs in underserved areas. And there are folks who are there for, because they have an incentive to be there through loan repayment or a J-1 visa waiver. There are others who oftentimes are our longer-term employees who are there because they have a heart for service. They want to be in that kind of situation. They enjoy working with the populations that we work with, both in rural and urban areas. And but to think that through before you start, I think is really key. I think some of the best examples of folks who have done this are some of the more obvious examples to me, and those oftentimes are, I'm thinking of actually two here in the state of Pennsylvania, who are, for some reason can we go back one? There we go. Those are the health centers that are religiously affiliated. And they have a real clear vision of the kind of candidate they want and the motivations of the candidate. They're kind of obvious examples, and they have thought this through already because they have a faith-based mission involved. But I think the rest of our members can do this also. It may not be quite as obvious, but definitely the candidate motivations, for instance, for moving into a more rural area, might be that they want to raise a family in a less developed, less busy sort of area. On the other hand, they may want to raise a family in a suburban area and commute into a city because suburban areas might have more opportunity, educational opportunities, or opportunities for their family. So what are those motivations? Have you thought them through? And are you able to use those in your strategic marketing, which is the next one? And I think too often, let's see, pick that go. Nope. There we go. I think too often our members and, well, all people who are hiring make the mistake of starting here at this step right in the middle, and they start writing ads and start placing job ads, and they start doing all sorts of things without really thinking through who's going to be involved, what's the process for recruiting, and what are the candidate motivations, and how, because when you're writing a job ad, when you're writing any kind of marketing materials or anything, to know the motivation is absolutely key. And you can look at any kind of branding campaign, any kind of advertising campaign, small market, big market, whatever, and the good ones have thought through what are the motivations of the audience. Who's, what kind of keywords, what kind of images, what kind of phrasing will motivate somebody to get serious about an ad or about a job in this case. There's some good stuff out there, resources like 3RNet, the ACU STAR², the National Health Service Corps has some good things out there. And you also have resources, I don't know about you folks, but I try to be a resource to my members. So a lot of these resources that I've listed here would be for your members, aimed at them, and writing that strategic marketing plan. So the next thing then on the hierarchy is regeneration, and we got several of you mentioned this on when we were talking about career ladders and that sort of thing, internal, moving people up internally, and giving them the opportunities to advance. I think oftentimes though, for instance, if you're hiring a physician or a dentist into a community health center, there may not be that much room for advancement. They're already at the top of the chain, top of the food chain, if you will. But what can you do? What can our members do to help them advance in their skills, to make sure that they have lots of input into clinical decision making? Some of them want to be involved in the administration, the business side of the community health centers, and what can they do there? One of the things for regeneration that we keep preaching, and I'm sure many of you do too, and I'd love to see any kind of feedback. If anybody has any success stories on getting our health centers to host more rotations for, particularly for nurse practitioners, PAs, and less so for medical students also, even the whole way across the spectrum to medical assistants and dental assistants and other folks who might be considered entry-level or frontline employees. What are they doing to host those? And when we're talking about, I think the career ladder for folks who are like dental assistants, medical assistants, and front desk people, the career ladder is even more important for them. I don't know about your folks, but my health centers are screaming about recruiting and retaining medical assistants. They just struggle with this all the time. We now have one of our health centers, and it looks like two more might get on board, or have now signed up with the National Institute for Medical Assistance Advancement, which is through CHC Inc.'s Weitzman Institute, and they are going to start training MAs on site. And so we hosted, one of the things we did was the folks from NEMA are more than happy to do webinars or to come into your conference and do a presentation about on-site medical assistant training. They do a great job, and they're really good to work with. And then some other things that you can see there, connecting with your area health education center, your AHAC. In Pennsylvania, at least, a lot of them are doing pipeline programs and like summer healthcare career camps, if you some things like that. And so they're good to connect with and make sure you're on their radar screen, or you're on theirs or whatever. Okay, so that's regeneration. That's the fourth step. And then final step is, oops, I went the wrong way. There we go. Whoops. Okay. Sorry, folks. There we go. Culture. This is you know, you hear a lot of talk about this, but I wonder how much time we really spend, or our community health centers really spend, reconsidering their culture, because of all the things that are difficult to change. This is probably the most difficult, because culture is usually ingrained, and it's hard when you look at your culture and try to think about what is good or bad about your culture. It really can get pretty personal very quickly. And I apologize, there's a mistake on this slide. Your most powerful retention tool, it should say retention tool in that first bullet, and I didn't see it until I was going through my notes. I really wasn't listening to Suzanne speak at all. I got to be honest with you, I was just worrying about what I was going to say. That's not true, but I was looking at what I was going to say, and I caught that mistake while the seminar was going on. So anyway, but I think community engagement, getting your folks involved in the community, particularly for those high-end folks who have the ability to get up and move anywhere in the country they want to move, getting them involved in the community is really important. And that's not just for them, it's for their families too, for the spouses, getting them to feel a sense of belonging, fulfillment, and also this reinforcement of your core values. Of course, to reinforce your core values, you got to know what your core values are. So that's some of the institutional introspection that we all need to go through, but I think our community health centers oftentimes need to go through that. So those are the 5 layers of the 3R net Judd Mellinger-Blouch recruitment for retention hierarchy. And like I said, you can feel free to steal. I thought it was a good framework for talking about these things to your members and at a seminar. And I guess I can answer any questions, or I'm going to turn the screen back over to Suzanne right now.
Awesome. Sorry, I was on mute and I was talking and no one could hear me. Thank you so much, Judd. I really appreciate it. Our screens are going a little nuts today. I apologize. Sometimes with the hitting it back and forth, it's not as seamless as we'd like it to be. But anyway, it worked and it went really well. So thank you so much to Judd for sharing all of that, for sharing your insight, as well as the resources that 3R Net has. And I believe Judd is the incoming president of 3R Net. So in his spare time, right? But anyway, so again, they have some really great resources, and that hierarchy is really awesome. I think it's I love that. Was actually new for me, Judd. I hadn't heard that about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I love how you did that, and so that was really insightful for me, and I hope it was really insightful for you as well. So I am going to you guys know about the STAR Center resources. Or recruitment and retention plan. A lot of things that we talked about today are in there, and also Judd put some great resources out there as well out in these slides. So these slides will be sent to you guys, so you can go through and you can see all of the amazing resources that we have, that not only we have at the STAR Center, but they're also available for you as well as Judd said, as to the health center. So again, thank you, Judd. It's always great to hear you talk. You have a wealth of knowledge in this arena, and I would encourage you, if you have any questions specifically for Judd after this, to reach out to him as well. Or like he said, if you want us to, to connect you with him, we would be happy to do that. So, okay, so yeah, I'm going to get to his questions in just a second, but I want to do a summary real quick. So, yes, recruitment and retention are inherently linked. And a smooth recruitment process is really important to employee retention overall. And then as Judd shared with us, candidate motivations, strategic, and now it's my turn for a typo, strategic marketing and culture also can impact retention. So think about that as well. Yeah, so I'm going to get to questions. I'm not sure. Yes, questions now. Questions, yes, time for questions. So I have a couple here in the chat from from folks that were asking questions for Judd, rather. I can't speak this afternoon. Someone had a question about the presentation at your annual conference, Judd. So they wanted to know, was the annual conference focused on provider recruitment, or did you talk about recruitment of all staff?
Yeah, we talked about we probably hit more on providers than others, because that's where things tend to go. But I know we did talk about retaining all levels of employees, from, the way I like to put it, is from medical assistants on down to physicians. And I know that Rosa Augusta, who from Urban Health Plan, who is just an absolute gem of a person, I know she talked, her onboarding strategy, her onboarding plan, if you will, is all employees. And when you see what is required of, what the meetings and so forth that employees are required to go to check-ins and all that, it's a big commitment on their part. So I know we talked about all levels of employees.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I don't know if you find this in your travels, Judd, but I think a lot of times we talk so much about provider recruitment and retention, but a lot of things can be applied universally. Some things are a little bit different, but a lot of the same principles can be applied.
Yeah, I agree. And there's one of the problem with MAs and folks like that is that because of the amount of money they're paid, and and oftentimes their living situations are more, they don't make as much money as a doctor, right? And so they're willing to move for a lot less money. They're willing to make a job change for $3 or $4 an hour, or for slightly better benefits, because that's a huge increase for them. And so you need to be, I think our members need to be cognizant of that, and really provide, if they can't pay that $3 to $4 more an hour, then what else are they doing to hold on to those folks? Are they including them in decisions? Are they giving them a career ladder? Are they making sure they understand the culture? Because many of, at least in Pennsylvania, I'm sure elsewhere, the MAs and community health workers and so forth, they're coming from the neighborhood or the region right around the community health center. And so if anybody should be tied into that culture, it would be them. And if you can't get them tied into that, and if you can't get them tied into the mission, then you're missing a golden opportunity there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Judd. That was wonderful. And we did have a couple other questions, but we're running a little tight on time today because we had so much great information. So what I'll do is I'll connect, I'm going to download the chat, and then we can make sure to connect our folks who ask the questions with Judd, and so you guys can get your questions answered, because I don't want for them to be forgotten. So thank you guys all for asking some great questions. Okay, moving on to the workforce TTA self-assessment. We talked a little bit about this last week, how it was going to be in your inbox as well. Guess what? The best laid plans sometimes don't go always as they plan. We are in a little delay getting approval from HRSA. Since it's going to live on our website, HRSA has to approve it, and we haven't gotten approval for them for that yet. So anyway, we have something for you guys in the meantime. So we sent you guys a worksheet or a workbook that evaluates all of our 8 components of a robust workforce TTA program. And this is in preparation for the release of the full tool, but I think it'll really help you guys get thinking about where your TTA is strongest and where maybe it needs, maybe you guys need to focus on some things, and specifically as we think about our next grant cycle starting in July. So go ahead and take that self-assessment. If you have any questions, certainly let us know. We're here to answer those questions, and hopefully it'll get you guys jump-started into thinking about maybe what you guys, what you're strong in and what you need to do in the future. Okay, so moving forward in our last 30 seconds we have, Our in-person meeting registration is coming very soon, likely tomorrow. I can tell you guys that it's going to be on May 19th and 20th in Sacramento, California. We recognize that the IWS meeting is on the East Coast, so we wanted to keep that in mind for all of our friends on the West Coast, and so we're going to have it on the West Coast this year. Hopefully you guys can make it. There will be no fee to attend, but you do have to take care of your logistics and your travel. So that's going to be coming to your inbox probably tomorrow, and let us know of any questions that you have in regards to that. Continue to connect with each other on the IWS platform. Send us your questions and needs via email, and we are excited to see you next time in March. And we're going to be diving into staff experience and how that you can incorporate your staff experience into your TTA programs and really how that affects retention. So we're going to leave the session evaluation is going to be popped into the chat momentarily. Once I hop off right now, thank you very much, Mariah, it's there. I'm going to hop off, but let you guys, we're going to leave that open so you guys can do the session evaluation, so we know what you guys liked, what you would like us to improve, and anything else you want to tell us. So anyway, thank you again to Judd. A wonderful presentation, really appreciated it, and we will see you guys in March. And in the meantime, certainly let us know what we can do to help you guys with your TTA programs. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.